Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Healthcare IT in the Cloud. So today we are going to be speaking about why healthcare companies are switching to the cloud. And the agenda for today's presentation is we're going to first talk about healthcare challenges in the digital age. Then we're going to talk about why we're seeing a growing number of healthcare companies switch to IT in the cloud. Then Emily from our team is going to give a demo of Epic Management and how they are using Meraki for their healthcare IT. And then we're going to switch to next steps and open up the floor for Q&A. So at the end of this webinar, you will all be eligible for free AP for IT professionals. And in order to claim your free device, your Meraki rep will be reaching out within the next week to confirm your eligibility and shipping address. At this point in time, I would like to introduce the speakers for today's webinar. We are joined by Amy Young, who heads the U.S. healthcare practice for Cisco, myself, and I am responsible for U.S. commercial marketing at Meraki, and Emily Sporl, who does product marketing. At this point in time, I would like to transition to Amy Young, and she will be speaking about the healthcare challenges that are being faced in today's digital age.
Thank you, Kristen. Thanks for the introduction. So I'm going to take a few minutes and just talk about some of the challenges that are facing healthcare in today's digital age. And, you know, that's a funny term, the digital age. We sort of take it for granted nowadays, but when you really stop and think about it, it is amazing to me that it's only been 10 years since the iPhone was rolled out and smartphones really became widely adopted. In that short 10 years, it has totally and completely changed our society. It's changed the way we live. It's changed the way we work. Everything we do has been transformed by the fact that the internet is in our pocket. It's really amazing to me. Sometimes I feel like I'm living through like the Industrial Revolution or something like the invention of the wheel. It's just probably the biggest change we're going to see in our lifetime. And some statistics I was looking at as I was, researching this presentation, there's some big things we can talk about, but sometimes the most profound things are found in the little changes. I found a statistic that said that since the iPhone was invented, sales of chewing gum in grocery stores has dropped 15%. And I think that's a consequence of the fact that we used to stand around and look at these impulse buy items in the store, but now we're looking at our phones. Our attention spans are so much shorter now. And in the business world, we have apps, we have texting, we have email. You can practically do anything nowadays without having to talk to a live person. And I will tell you, as somebody who doesn't really like talking on the phone, I think it's awesome. I love it. I love that you can do so many things online now and you don't have to talk to a live person. However, it does seem that some industries are responding a little faster than others to the digital age. And when it comes to healthcare, which is what we're talking about today, healthcare does feel like one of those industries where things are just taking a little bit longer to catch up. And here's some actual hard data that kind of backs up that feeling. The Global Center for Digital Business Transformation, which is a joint venture between Cisco and IMD, they did a study a few years ago. If you've heard of the book called The Digital Vortex, that was the book that came out from this major study they did, and this was done in 2015. They found that at the time, only 67% of healthcare respondents said that digital disruption was not a C-level concern for them. And you might look at this and think, well, that's not really true. We are, concerned and interested about digital disruption. It's something that we are working towards. It is a priority. And I think that's true. I don't think this result shows that it's not a priority for healthcare, but I think that, healthcare is one of those industries that everything is so immediate. We're talking about human lives, and it's all of these regulations that we have to deal with, from HIPAA to MACRA to everything else, and all of the insurance uncertainty. I think that the digital disruption maybe was not the #1 thing on everyone's minds when this question was asked. This is starting to change. There are some newer numbers that are coming out that are going to show a change in this, but I think it's interesting that, so many healthcare respondents said it wasn't a concern. But at the same time, things are changing all around us. As I said at the beginning, we've changed as a society. Consumers are so tech-savvy now. They've got Dr. Google. They've got social media. Everybody's wearing these devices, whether that's an Apple Watch or a Fitbit. You know, we're looking at the end of the day, did I get my 10,000 steps today? We know so much more about our own health because we're wearing and carrying all of these devices. And as we move forward, some really cool things are going to be able to be measured by devices, blood glucose, blood pressure, just so many things that we can't even imagine right now are going to be able to be measured by devices and wearables. And another thing that's really becoming more mainstream is telemedicine. So many things can be done over video nowadays. I read an article the other day that was talking to different, patients who had experienced telemedicine, and this patient was telling a story, and he said, yeah, I was driving down the road, and I decided that I was going to pull over and have my visit with my doctor on my phone. And that just kind of struck me because I thought, wow, this is the world we're living in now. We can sit there in our cars on the side of the road and actually have a doctor visit without having to go anywhere else. It's pretty amazing that we can do that now. And as these wearables and devices and videos make their way into healthcare, it's also being used by doctors and nurses and other practitioners. They're increasingly turning to mobile to improve patient care, make things work a little more smoothly. I'll talk a little bit about that later. But it's all coming. And this leaves us with a huge explosion of data. You've heard the term big data. It's a big buzzword in healthcare now, and everybody's talking about artificial intelligence and cognitive, technologies and what they're going to be able to do for us. We're just at the beginning of that right now, but this data explosion is going to be big in the next decade. But on top of all of that, for healthcare, like I said, you've got these regulations. You've got HIPAA, you've got MACRA. You're wondering, how am I going to show value? Especially some of the smaller clinics and hospitals and doctors, they're thinking, I've got to show quality. I've got to show that what I'm doing is valuable to get that reimbursement, and how am I going to do that? And another thing everybody's thinking about, of course, is security. You've seen all of the headlines. You know that a cyber hack by someone can not only maybe give you a HIPAA fine, but it also could completely cease the operations because you rely on these technologies. So that's a concern as well. So another side effect of the shift that we're seeing is the increasing importance of patient satisfaction. That's another word you hear a lot, the consumerism of healthcare. And so when I was researching this presentation, I thought, well, I'm just going to go and do a Google search and see what comes up when I put in patient satisfaction, technology, Wi-Fi, mobile apps, that sort of thing. And these are just 4 of the headlines that I found. I could have put a lot more on here. But what we're finding is that patients want good, reliable Wi-Fi when they're in your facility. They want it to be just like everywhere else. They want to use their mobile devices. They want to get on the internet. They want to do all of the things they do at home and everywhere else when they're in the hospital or a doctor's office. And it turns out that that really does influence their perception and satisfaction with the hospital or clinic. Some of the articles I found, like the second one here, raised the idea that Wi-Fi could become a question on the HCAP survey. As you know, that's the survey that the government asks a lot of facilities and hospitals to do on a sampling of their patients to see, how their experience was. A lot of analysts are saying that, the communication category is a big one, and eventually they're going to ask, how was the network in your hospital, and how did that impact your experience? And if that wasn't enough, there's another really, really good reason why you want to have those high patient satisfaction scores. Profitability, financial, money. Deloitte did a study in 2016. They did a white paper, and they found a really strong correlation between hospitals with high patient-reported satisfaction scores and the profitability of that facility. And I'll give you the hard numbers here. So they found that hospitals with excellent HCAHPS ratings over a 6-year period had a net margin of 4.7% on average, compared to just 1.8% for hospitals with low ratings. So that's more than double. That's a big impact on the bottom line. And why is this happening? They didn't have hard data to show why, but they explored some themes. Perhaps it has to do with the interaction between the patients and the caregivers. A highly engaged staff is going to boost the patient experience. It's going to potentially cause a higher quality of care. And when patients receive this high quality care and excellent customer service, it saves money because you're not wasting time and resources having to deal with complaints, having to solve problems. That's an impact as well. And one more thing they found that was interesting was these facilities that had these high ratings and had this great patient experience, they had made investments. You know, they put a lot of money out into things like technology and other initiatives to improve patient satisfaction, but what they got back was even more. So they showed that the ROI is strong when you invest in patient satisfaction. And so I've talked a lot about the patient, but it's true that the workforce experience matters too. A new report from the American Association of Medical Colleges came out in March, and they predicted that by 2025, we are going to have a doctor shortage in the United States, anywhere in the range of 35,000 up to 88,000 fewer doctors than what we're going to need for our growing and aging population. So it's increasingly critical that we engage and we retain the good clinicians that we do have. And one of the ways to do that is by making sure that they can work the way that they want to work. And statistics show 4 out of 5 currently use their smartphones at work. They want to use them. What are they doing with them? Up to 77% use mobile apps to access clinical information. Many of them are also using iPads and tablets to do their charting. And all of that adds up to about 25 hours a week that they spend on those mobile devices. You know, totally makes sense in healthcare because you're not sitting behind a desk. You're moving around from room to room and floor to floor, and these mobile devices really come in handy. So underpinning all of this is Wi-Fi. 71% of mobile communication flows over Wi-Fi, and of course that's only expected to grow, they think, up to 10 times by 2021. So just to kind of take a step back and look at it across the entire continuum, today healthcare is no longer constrained by time or place. From the home to the physician's office to the hospital and home again, there are so many places along this continuum that technology can play a strong role. You know, from the phone call or the text or the email or whatever, you know, eventually the patient's going to be able to do for their first interaction, you know, to when they come to the facility. Maybe there's an app now they can use to help them get around. You know, we're able to use technology to make everything more efficient and easier. And another thing that's going to be really important is the way that you're going to be able to follow up with patients. Because in today's competitive environment, you don't want to just have a patient that has a single encounter and you never see them again. In the competitive environment we're in, you want to make sure that you have a patient that's loyal to you for life, especially in places where there's a lot more competition in bigger urban areas. Patients are shopping and they want to have the best possible experience, and if they give them that, they're going to keep coming back. And by doing all of this and focusing on the patient and workforce satisfaction, it's possible to make a real difference in population health across the entire community. And that's all I have. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you, Amy, for giving a healthcare overview. So now I'm going to talk about some of the reasons that healthcare IT teams are switching to the cloud. So the first category of why a lot of healthcare IT teams are switching to the cloud is that it allows them to have a built-in security infrastructure. So the cloud allows them to have more highly reliable, redundant data centers, no wireless LAN controllers or redundant controllers, and also the cloud gives them the potential to create and maintain HIPAA-compliant networks and mobile devices. So a great cloud-managed solution will save IT teams time by allowing them to quickly and remotely deploy and then easily manage geographically distributed sites, even with lean healthcare IT staff. Additionally, with a cloud infrastructure and a powerful configuration templates, for example, it's possible to remotely configure tens, hundreds, or even thousands of sites with a baseline level of security and functionality. And then having a cloud-based dashboard with built-in remote monitoring tools means that healthcare IT teams can log in from anywhere to view and to troubleshoot their gear. At this point in time, we are going to transition to the demo. Today, we are going to be giving a demo of Epic Management, and Epic Management has given Meraki explicit permissions to demo their network from an administrative vantage today. So just as a note, this is a different company than Epic Systems that makes the popular healthcare mobile application. And Epic Management is a leading provider of healthcare management and consulting services, and they have deployed Meraki IT infrastructure that is currently being used by over 275 physicians and over 150,000 patients. So at this point in time, I would like to transition to Emily for the demo.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So hopefully y'all can hear me now. And what I'm going to do, let me just maximize this. So we've been hearing quite a bit about some of the challenges providers are facing. Particularly what I'm hearing are things around deploying secure, robust guest and staff wireless networks on premises, that proliferation of mobile devices, both the managed mobile devices that maybe your staff and physicians are using, as well as unmanaged devices that guests might be bringing onto your wireless networks. Challenges around how do you get that centralized visibility and control that allows for things like remote deployment, configuration, maintenance, and troubleshooting, and then sort of the umbrella issue of security that sort of permeates all of that. So what I want to do is actually dive into a specific cloud-managed solution, the Cisco Meraki solution, and try to address all of these themes as best I can in the time permitting. We really, to be honest, will only have time to, at most, barely scratch the surface on a couple of our products. And I do have a special treat, which is that not only are we going to be demoing Epic Management's network, which is what you're looking at right now, but we're also going to be diving into the corporate network of Cisco Meraki to highlight a few additional features and functionality that aren't present on this network. So just to kind of level set for those of you who might be new to our solution or have never heard of Cisco Meraki, Meraki actually used to be a startup. We were founded in 2006 by some MIT grads, and we invented cloud-managed wireless networking way back in 2006, and that's how we got our start and what we were doing when Cisco acquired us in 2012. Since then, we've been operating just as is, continuing right along with product innovation, research and development, and what we now have is a full IT portfolio that is 100% cloud managed. So we are not just a wireless cloud managed provider at this point, solution provider. We also have a full line of layer 2 and layer 3 access and aggregation switches, security appliances, a line of security appliances. We have mobility management for iOS, Androids, Macs, and PCs, which will be of interest if you do have managed devices, for example, maybe iPads that your physicians carry around with them to take notes. We also have VoIP phones, as well as a full line of security cameras. So all of this is designed to be 100% cloud managed, and our goal is to try to make IT more intuitive, smarter, faster, free up some of the sort of daily challenges that you face and make life easier for IT admins. So that's sort of the spiel. What I want to do is now dive into the demo and kind of quickly give you guys a little taste of what the Meraki dashboard has in it. So what I did, which any of you could do if you were a customer of ours, is I opened up a web browser on an internet connected device, so anywhere in the world that I have internet connectivity, if it's a phone, a laptop, a tablet. I went to dashboard.meraki.com and I logged into with my username and credentials logged in, and right now, again, we have permission to demo Epic Management's network with sort of full permissions here, which is really generous of them. And so what you can see is right away everywhere in the world that they have Meraki equipment deployed, so primarily San Francisco and Los Angeles. And, you know, it's easy to dive into any of these networks, drill down, and see that they have a highly distributed setup here, which might be similar to your setup if you're managing a lot of clinics or a lot of hospitals. Of course, we could expand this view out here, see that they are actually managing 21 networks here they all are. We're getting health and connectivity status about those networks. We'd see maybe a little sliver of downtime here if there were some reboots, or chunks of red if there had been significant downtime. But it's very, very easy to very quickly, say, for example, sort by usage and dive into any one of these specific networks. So what I want to do is actually show you this page just to kind of level set and give you a sense for some of the immediate statistics and data that you can start getting about those mobile devices that are connecting to your network and about the state of bandwidth consumption and application usage and things of that sort. So we can start slicing and dicing this data. I'll just keep it on the last week view, but up to a month or down to a 2-hour granular view. And you can see that right now we're getting statistics about the unique number of client devices, the type of client devices connecting. So I can actually come in and if I wanted to maybe look for clients that are connecting to specific wireless networks if I want, or maybe I just want to find the devices that are currently online that are Apple devices, right? And right away I can see that 18 devices on this network match this search criteria. Now this ability to identify devices by operating system, device type, online, offline, this is what we call client device fingerprinting. We keep as part of our cloud-based solution sort of a database of new operating systems, new devices as they come online. So you don't ever have to download a configuration and sort of manually update anything on your end to have this ability to identify devices very quickly. We keep that up to date for you in the back end. And similarly, we have what we call application fingerprinting. So we've actually algorithmically classified and tagged hundreds of applications. Of course, we can see websites. And we've basically filtered them and sorted them and organized them for you. And we keep this list, again, current and up to date as new applications come online. Again, just a cloud benefit that you don't have to spend time meticulously keeping track of things. We do it for you so that you can come in and actually sort by usage and see where your bandwidth is going, right? So on Epic Management's network, Netflix and YouTube seem to be heavy bandwidth users. So we could, if we wanted to, dive into any of these applications. I'll just pick Netflix, get a little bit more information about it. Again, it's already sorted by usage, but we could sort by any of these columns here, and we can actually drill down into the specific device that is causing the majority of Netflix traffic on our network, again, in the last week. And if we dive into it, here's some of the visibility that you get inherent with a Meraki wireless solution. You can immediately see that this device is currently connected. You can see that it looks like it's connected to one of Epic's guest networks here. We can actually see the name of the access point, and I could dive into it, start checking out its health and connectivity and configuration from this link here, signal strength, some details about the specific device. And if we scroll down, statistics about the device's application and bandwidth usage. And again, maybe we could look out over the last 30 days. We can see that there is a significant amount of Netflix here. So when you think about controlling these mobile devices, being able to sort of dive in and actually contain some of this behavior, right away I could, if I wanted to block this device, I could apply a group policy to it if we had any defined here on this network, and even apply a policy by which wireless network they're connected to. So all of this is possible. There are many, many ways of applying group policies to mobile devices on a Meraki network. So you can do what I just did here. You could go back out to that client's view and search for a bunch of them. Maybe we want to find our Android devices if there are any, select them all, apply a policy that way. You can apply policies automatically by wireless SSID. You can also use Radius if you want to pass through policies based on usernames and credentials. And then if you incorporate other pieces of what we call the Meraki full stack, right? If you have our security appliance, for example, we can integrate easily with Active Directory to push policies out that way as well, among other things. So to show you very quickly how you would set up a wireless network, a secure and robust wireless network, I'm just going to continue to show off Epic Management's view here. What you can do is you can go into this SSID page and configure an SSID our access points all come with 15. You wouldn't, of course, turn them all on at once because of the interference, but we have some pretty cool functionality around AP tagging and SSID availability that allows you to turn on and off wireless networks on schedules if you'd like. So perhaps you need that many SSIDs to kind of accommodate that use case, or you want to have some SSIDs that you can quickly turn on at a moment's notice. But you'd come on, you'd enable an SSID here, and then you would edit it. So just to sort of show you some of the security and functionality around setting up a wireless SSID, if we were going to pretend like we were creating a guest network here, we just select our guest SSID. We decide how we want to allow clients to associate to that wireless SSID. Is it an open network? Is there a password? Is it, certain devices can access the network? Are we using a WPA2 Enterprise? So it's an open network here. It's a guest SSID. The next decision you have to make is whether you take advantage of the Meraki built-in hosted splash page functionality. So you might want a click-through splash page with some terms and conditions, or perhaps you want to enable other types of authentication here with Active Directory or Facebook credentials or Google credentials to allow people to sign on to a wireless network. Perhaps if you're running our mobility management solution, you want to prevent devices from joining a wireless network until they have installed a special profile, a Meraki Systems Manager profile that will actually lock down the device in really granular ways. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the demo. So a slew of different options here. And then really all you need to do is come in and decide if you're going to put your SSID in what we call NAT mode. If you do this, if you just click this button here, what it does is it will allow the access point to issue secure, isolated Class A IP addresses, which essentially means that the mobile clients connecting wirelessly or the clients connecting wirelessly to this network can't see or pass traffic between themselves, and they can't see or pass traffic between themselves and your wired LAN unless you allow it with firewall rules. But they can get out to the internet. You can see that in literally about 3 clicks, you could, if you wanted to, create a secure, isolated guest wireless network that allows for internet-only connectivity that is fairly robust and secure. And if you are dealing with a lot of mobile devices coming onto your network, there are things like band steering. You can nudge those faster devices to the 5 gigahertz band, leave the 2.4 gigahertz radio for the slower devices. You can even set things like minimum bit rates if you want to prevent legacy devices from joining a network and bottlenecking the experience for everyone else. You can see that was a very easy, pain-free setup. And in terms of the control aspect, right? So once you've got your wireless up and running, we've looked at the visibility, right? We looked at all of these different networks that Epic Management oversees. We dove into one network. We got a sense for some of the bandwidth consumption and application consumption and the number and types of users, and we just saw how you would deploy an SSID very quickly. The control aspect that goes along with that visibility is through these group policies, which I was alluding to earlier. So, maybe we really care about throttling Netflix. Maybe we only care about throttling it during our clinic hours on weekdays. And what we can do is we can actually come in and create a custom rule where if we want, we can outright block an application. So perhaps what we want to do is we want to block Netflix entirely if it's causing a lot of grief on our network, or if we don't want to block it, if we want to prioritize or throttle it in some way, we can do traffic shaping. So it's the same idea. If there happens to be an application that we haven't sort of cataloged for you in the cloud and isn't automatically showing up, of course you can create your own custom expressions here to drill down into identifying that application. But just to sort of give an example, again, we will take Netflix, and I don't know, maybe iTunes and Hulu were also causing us some grief. So it's very easy to take these applications, literally say, you know what, we're going to have a limit when people use them, if they have this policy, and maybe throttle down to a stingy 250 kilobits per second. Now, if we cared about these applications, if these were priority applications, maybe Citrix or some kind of application that again, clinicians and staff and physicians are using for patient records or things of that sort, and we want to make sure that it gets priority airtime, what we can do is have these applications here, make sure that there is no limit, unlimited, and then we can set quality of service tags, assuming that our upstream switches support that. So it's as easy as that. Of course, you'd hit save, and then you would have a group policy, and then again, there were many, many different ways of going about and deploying those group policies. Now, what I want to do, actually, is switch over to our Meraki corporate network. Same idea you can see everywhere in the world that we have offices, because I want to show you guys a couple of interesting features and functionality, and it might look more interesting with a full stack solution, and just kind of highlight some of the benefits of the cloud. Again, if you're managing not just wireless, but switching, mobile device management, perhaps security, and you want to have a holistic, centralized view of all of your equipment wherever in the world it happens to be deployed. That's what we really, really specialize in. So here on our network, and again, maybe we'll just slice this data by the last week. I just want to say, with the Meraki solution, when you're thinking about deployment, right, staging and deployment, there's a few ways that you can get stuff up and running. Of course, you can pre-configure your equipment before it's ever been plugged into power or the internet. That's a feature of our cloud. What happens is when you order a bunch of gear from us, you get a special code that you can input into the Meraki dashboard, so it pre-populates with all of your equipment. And then you can actually go in if you want and start creating your networks and assigning equipment to those networks and configuring your policies and configuring the setup. So when you have the gear that arrives on site, all you have to do is plug it into power, plug it into the internet, and it grabs its configuration settings from the cloud and runs with those. There are ways to automate this with configuration templates. So once you've created a baseline network, you can go and bind, a baseline template. You can go in and bind networks to that template. So it's a very easy way to set baseline security across, let's say, tens, hundreds, thousands of clinics maybe, or hospitals, or other sites that you might have. And that way, when you make a change to this template, it gets propagated immediately to all of those bound networks. We also have in-depth APIs that you can use to really script out some amazing functionality that allows you to deploy networks, thousands of networks if you want, in just a few minutes. But what I want to do is pivot a little bit and talk about our mobility management solution. Because again, one of those key challenges that I was hearing was, how do you deal with the proliferation of mobile devices, both managed and unmanaged? So we looked just now a little bit at the unmanaged piece, right? If guests are bringing devices onto a wireless network, how do you identify rogue usage? How do you implement a policy to control that? What I want to focus on now are the managed clients. So these might be the iPads that you give to physicians, or the laptops or desktops that staff are using. And that's where mobility management solutions really shine. What this means is you will install a profile on these devices, and there are a myriad of different ways of getting the profile from Meraki Systems Manager onto iOS, Androids, Macs, or PCs. But once those profiles are installed, you can see you get a client view. It's sort of similar to what we saw before. You know, you still have the ability to do the searching that you want to kind of dive into any particular device, but you'll see that the level of detail is incredibly granular. I don't have time to go into everything here, but there's a lot happening. Everything down to nitty-gritties about device storage and sort of what the network status is on various levels, whether it's online and disk usage and things like that. But you'll notice that there's also an expanded tool set here, a remote tool set for locking, wiping, erasing devices, pushing out updates, putting a device into single app mode, that kind of thing. So the way this works is, once clients have these profiles installed, what they can do is actually get what we call sort of device setting profiles. So this is where you can actually come in and really lock down a specific device for security purposes, or pre-configure it so that it will automatically join wireless networks or be able to VPN out, things of that sort. And we have a whole slew of different profiles here. What I'll do is I will just pick one. This one has a whole bunch of different configuration options. So if I dive into this student profile, you know, this is sort of an education use case, but you can see that essentially I have the ability to go in, I can tag the device a certain way and group it a certain way. So maybe if I had physician devices versus staff devices versus, I don't know, hospital exec devices, I can come in and tag them a certain way. And I can come in and set restrictions, right? I can say which aspects of a mobile device are allowed for this particular profile, right? You know, can you access certain things like the iTunes store? Can you use Safari? Can you use your camera, et cetera, et cetera? Security and privacy, maybe we want to force encrypted backups of these devices. I can come in and set up wireless networks very easily. And again, if you're using Meraki access points, it's literally as easy as selecting your Meraki wireless network here that you want to connect to, which specific SSID will be pre-configured on this device, and then you just sort of push that out. You can even set things, I guess, like wallpaper, home screen layout. There's a slew of different options here. But one of the key features of a mobility management solution is the deployment of applications. So just very quickly highlighting how this works. Once you are trying to manage mobile devices, what you can do is add a new one. We integrate with the Apple Store. We integrate with Google Play Store. You can push applications to Macs, to Windows. I'm just going to use iOS because this is what I'm familiar with. But maybe there is a health app that you really care about. I don't know what this is, but I'll just pick this and pretend. If you wanted to deploy this to a bunch of provider-managed devices, literally you would select the app. You can decide which specific devices will get this application. Again, this depends on the way that you have set up your tagging functionality, and tagging is just the way to, in your own organization, describe how you want to organize things, right? So maybe you have, again, physician iPads versus clinician iPads versus staff iPads, things of that sort. There are times within Systems Manager where we have automatically generated tags for you based on certain criteria. You know, like, is this device within geofencing compliance or within security compliance, that kind of thing. But you know, you pick your devices, and you'll be able to see them all listed here. And you'll notice that these are now all iOS devices because I winnowed out by an automatic iOS tag. But literally, that's it. You would hit save, you push it out. Basically, all of the devices that have these specific tags would then have a new health remedy app in this case. So that kind of helps sort of very quickly scratch the surface around common issues with managed mobile devices. The very last thing that I want to take maybe 5 minutes and talk through is some of the security that we provide. Now, there's security baked right into our entire system. All of our access points have, stateful firewalling in there, layer 3 firewalls, layer 7 firewalls. We have a full lineup of security appliances, which I want to talk about in just a second. The connections between Meraki equipment and our cloud is secure. It's encrypted twice, first with proprietary encryption and then again with SSL. And we don't ever see or store end user data. We use what we call an out-of-band control plane. So that sort of user data goes wherever it was intended to go. We don't store that in the cloud. We're literally capturing the management and monitoring statistics we need to present the information that you're seeing here in the dashboard. So things like the number and types of unique client devices, bandwidth consumption, application type, things of that sort. And so the connection between an end piece of Meraki gear and the cloud averages about 1 kilobit per second per device. So it's pretty small. So what I want to do very quickly, Actually, while I'm here, this is actually a very cool thing. If we look at one of the things that we can do because we are cloud managed is we can look at our entire organization across all of our networks, all of our gear with summary reporting and get some indicators and alerts around when usage is outside of a normal scope, right, for a given time frame. Maybe if we look at like the last week, we can see stuff that's going on. Now, this is particular to again, our corporate network, but it's useful and it's interesting. And because we integrate and we have our switches and our security appliances and everything else, we're seeing clients across all of these platforms. We're seeing things that have to do with our switches. We're seeing usage stats, et cetera, and top devices, top operating systems. So it's a useful way to kind of get a holistic view of not just one network or one layer of network like wireless, but wireless and wired all at once. But what I want to do is I want to dive into our security appliance and just very quickly show you our security center. Now, our MX security appliances do integrate with Cisco's advanced malware protection. So we do provide advanced malware detection for all web traffic in real time through that. We also integrate with Threat Grid. So if you need sandboxing or you want a deeper contextualized analysis of your files, we basically are analyzing suspicious files against approximately, well, actually over 450 behavioral indicators and sort of global malware databases to detect events. We have intrusion prevention, which we actually leverage Snort for, and that's built right in. And we have a very, very comprehensive content filtering solution that enables you to either sort of download the top couple million most frequent hits of a particular content category, or do real-time cloud lookups that cache. So your performance improves over time, but essentially there's sort of limitless possibilities for content filtering, even down to the sort of subdomain level of a URL based on the kind of regex expressions that you can type into dashboard. But you can kind of get a little bit of an overview here of some of the the most prevalent threats, and you can see if you were to click on something like this, we provide a lot of details and places that you can go to get additional information, and you can actually drill down and see actual events over time. You can see sources and destinations, and we could dive into the specific client view wherever in the world it happens to be. So useful and interesting security features there. Now, I didn't even get a chance to touch on some of the amazing other things that we have around remote troubleshooting and things like that. You can, every piece of Meraki equipment, whether it's an access point, a switch, a security appliance, everything comes with what we call live tools. So there's these individual tools that are individual to that product that allow you to do everything from run a remote cable test on the switches that actually estimates cable length for you and drills down into every single twisted pair in that cable to test whether or not it's okay and report back to you, which is supremely useful and saves a lot of time and truck rolls for a lot of organizations through things like rebooting and testing throughput and whatnot. And it sort of depends on which tool you're using and which device you have. But there's also things like firmware updates that are global. We have the ability to automatically and seamlessly push all feature and firmware updates to you through the cloud, which is also a huge time saver. And of course, there's a lot of flexibility around how you schedule that and which devices get what kind of updates at what times. But there's all kinds of additional things that I wish we had time to talk through, but we don't. But I do hope that this gave you a very quick high-level overview of some of the features of the Meraki solution that might be pertinent to you and hopefully whet your appetites. And if you do have any more interest in learning more or having a deep dive into any single one of our product lines here, I would encourage you guys to check out some of the other webinars that we host. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Kristen. Let me hit present here.
So thank you, Emily, for sharing that demo. So at this point in time, I would like to speak about the next steps. So the first thing that I recommend you guys do if you want to learn more about Meraki and how our healthcare customers are using Meraki to manage their IT is to take a look at our customer case studies. So 3 of my favorite case studies that we have on the case study section of our website are Attune, Kindred Healthcare, and Harbin Clinic. And if you'd like to learn even more about Meraki, there are a few different options that you can take. So the first option is that you can contact us for a risk-free evaluation. Second, you can also check out our website and blog. We have a lot of great content on them. And the third thing is you can contact your Meraki rep. At this point in time, we would like to open up the floor for Q&A. And any questions that are not answered during this webinar, our team will be following up with you after the webinar. So feel free to submit them at this point in time.
Okay, so I am going to answer a question that pops up all the time just because I don't know if I spoke to it during the demo, but we often get the question, well, okay, you're a cloud managed IT solution, so what happens if I can't access the cloud? So what happens if your internet connectivity is lost? Which is a great question. Essentially what will happen is your Cisco Meraki network will continue to operate with its last known configuration settings. So your SSIDs, wireless networks will still broadcast. You should still have access to all of your local file shares and print servers and things like that. But of course you can't get online to tweak configuration settings through the Meraki dashboard. Now usually this is okay because normally when you lose your WAN connectivity, you're on the phone with your ISP or service provider trying to figure out why your connection died. If you have accidentally misconfigured your Meraki equipment, however, there are ways of accessing our gear without an internet connection. So if you're, say, for example, directly associated to a wireless SSID or connected to some Meraki equipment, there's special URLs you can type in your web browser. Once you authenticate locally to the device, you'll be able to have some bare bones configuration information, things like setting up VLANs and whether or not you're using DHCP or manual IP addressing and auto negotiation versus manual negotiation speeds for wired connections and things like that, that will allow you to get back online. So how does the licensing, so how do we work with yearly maintenance and paying for that and equipment and things of that sort? So one other thing to note about the Meraki specific solution is that the way it works is you purchase the hardware, whatever that is, if it's an access point, a switch, a security appliance, and then you buy a license to access that gear. And that license can be anywhere from 1, 3, 5, I think all the way up through 10 years. And the license is comprehensive and all you can eat. And by that we mean it includes all of your enterprise technical support. It includes access to all the features available to you in the dashboard. So we don't really ever do a per feature, per user licensing model, except in certain cases with the MX security appliance because we are integrating with, say, for example, Snort and AMP and a few other things. So you would need an advanced security license for some of those features on the MX security appliance side. But after that, there isn't a sort of per user. It's not like up to 100 users or up to 10 users kind of model at all. So you would have access to the dashboard features, and then you will have access to all the new features and firmware updates that we push out roughly every quarter. In the event that you don't renew your license, you go into a very extended grace period and we contact you, and of course we would much prefer to work with you as a customer and find a way to solve any issues that you might be having around licensing. But at the end of the day, we're a cloud managed service, not unlike your Salesforce deployment or other cloud managed services. And so at some point we would have to conclude that and turn off your ability to access the device. However, you know, if you're buying a year or 3-year license, typically at that point, you're going to be looking to refresh hardware anyway in certain cases. So, you know, if for some reason we weren't working out for you, you know, that would be probably an opportune time to move on. So how well does Meraki play with heterogeneous environments with, say, for example, Cisco Catalyst gear or other equipment? That's a great question. So you don't need to purchase a full Meraki stack at any point if you have, say, other vendors who are providing hardware for you that works. You could, if you wanted, only have our wireless access points, or you could only have our switches, or you could only have our phones or our security cameras. You could even only have our mobile device management, which is a software-only product. There's no hardware that goes with that. and interoperate and have a heterogeneous environment. The issue is that you will have separate logins, right? So Cisco gear, so thinking about like catalyst switches and aeronets, are visible to Meraki equipment if they sit downstream and will show up as clients in sort of the usual way that you would have sort of client visibility, but you cannot manage Cisco equipment through the Meraki dashboard, and you can't really manage Meraki equipment as well through any sort of Cisco or ICE interface as you could through the Meraki dashboard. So we are kind of our own ecosystem here, if you will. But that's a great question. So if I access Meraki equipment directly by going to those special URLs, does the interface look the same as the cloud management interface? Not quite. It is going to be, again, a more stripped down version, but it is still graphical. One thing to note is that we don't have any command line interface in the Meraki dashboard at all. It's purely web GUI based. So questions around bandwidth overhead of our MX security appliances. We do have a sizing guide up on our website. One really great place to check for information if you haven't been to our website. It's a little tough to find, so I'll give you the URL. It's meraki.cisco.com/library. We have a ton of documentation up there. I believe our MX sizing guide, which goes through real world scenarios, so we tested out, you know, what is the throughput of various models of our security appliances when you have certain features turned on and under certain use case conditions. So you should be able to see all of that there. Do Meraki access points provide support for install in industrial and outdoor environments? Yes, so we have a full lineup of access points for both indoor and outdoor or industrial indoor use cases. We do make a range of IP67 rated access points that support your standard N connector external antenna. So if you needed something other than Omni antenna, you wanted patch or sector, or even we're deployed, for example, in the Barclaycard Center in Madrid, which is a big stadium. If you need sort of the what we call the Cisco Gilaroo antenna, or we call it the Cisco Stadium antenna, we support those as well. So why do the APs only run at half duplex? The APs don't necessarily only run at half duplex, I don't think. Again, might be something to check out with your rep. There might be degraded performance with access points if they're taking advantage of a feature that's built into them, which is the automatic self-healing meshing capability. So all of our access points, if you weren't aware, have the ability to dynamically, automatically mesh with neighbors, Meraki neighbors within line of sight. We use proprietary protocols for that. But in the event that you needed to extend your wireless network somewhere where you had power but no CAT Ethernet cabling, you could do so. Or in the event that that sort of gateway cable goes down and there's a problem with it, your network might still be able to provide coverage, but at a slightly degraded performance at that point.
So thank you for joining us for today's webinar, and we look forward to seeing you at future webinars, and we will be following up with any questions that were not answered during today's session. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day.